This is Henry Simon, bringing you another story from my files here at the Missing Persons Bureau.
In these stories of the Missing Persons Bureau, dramatized for Henry Simon by Ross Napier, names and addresses have, for obvious reasons, been changed. In one moment, the search for Diana Forrest. Address unknown. And here again is Henry Simon.
They met casually enough in the foyer of the Plaza Hotel in Rome. She was having difficulty in making herself understood at the reception desk. He had a fluent knowledge of Italian and was asking if he could be of service. She was most grateful, and expressing her appreciation with a smile, informed him that she'd lost the key to her room and was most anxious to secure another.
I really can't think what I can have done with it. It's stupid, I know, but there it is.
Se la signora vorrebbe parlare col gerente?
What does he say?
He suggests you speak to the manager.
But all I want is another key. Does he have to make an issue of it?
You just leave it to me. Non è necessario disturbare il gerente. La signora ha perso la chiave della sua camera e desidera un altro per poter entrare.
Oh, mi perdoni, signore. Credevo che la signora non era soddisfatta della sua camera. Se il signore la domanderebbe di aspettare un momentino, vado a cercare un'altra chiave all'ufficio.
Va bene, grazie.
Well?
He's gone to get one. I take it he knows the number.
He should do. 32. I wrote it down for him.
He thought you were complaining that the room wasn't to your liking.
Oh, good heavens, no. It's a glorious room. I look right out over the river.
You're more fortunate than I am. My view is restricted to the street.
Well, in that case, I don't envy you. It's such a noisy street with all that traffic. I'm sure I'd find it most distracting. But you've been most kind. Thank you so much.
Would you consider it forward of me if I asked you to join me for a drink in the lounge while you're waiting?
Well, it's very nice of you, but...
Grand. We can sit out on the terrace and enjoy that Roman sunshine. Darnley's my name, by the way. Richard Darnley.
How do you do? I'm Diana Forrest.
Tanto piacere di far la sua conoscenza, signora.
I beg your pardon.
Nice to know you.
Oh.
I wouldn't say my Italian is perfect, but it sounds impressive, don't you think?
Thoroughly professional. I only wish mine did. But to date my repertoire is confined to yes, no, thank you, how much, and could you direct me to the powder room? It really is charming here.
That sun's not too hot on you, is it?
No, it's just perfect. It'll put some natural colour in my cheeks. After London's grey skies, I can't get too much.
You live in London?
Born and bred. You?
Born in Canterbury, raised in Edinburgh. You here on a holiday?
Well, officially I'm resting, doctor's orders. Technically, I have a whole week to do what I please when I please.
Wonderful. You know Rome at all?
It's my first visit.
Perhaps you'll allow me to show you the sights, eh?
At this juncture, I think I should point out that I'm a married woman.
Oh, forgive me. I didn't notice the ring. Your husband...
No, unfortunately, he couldn't make it.
You're alone?
Well, yes.
In that case, I insist. I wouldn't dream of letting you loose in a city like Rome. With these Italian men, every woman needs an escort. They have a fast reputation, and believe me, it's well-deserved.
I'm sure I'm quite capable of taking care of myself.
Not another word. It's settled.
You don't believe in taking no for an answer, do you?
Ah, but you didn't say no.
I didn't say yes, either.
Well, let's leave it at perhaps then, shall we? We'll discuss it over dinner this evening.
Oh, really? And you talk about Italians.
What was your room number again?
Oh, 32.
Divided by 4, and what have you got? You can expect me at 8.
Needless to say, Darnley had his way. And in the next few days, he and Diana Forrest were constant companions. They visited the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, St. Peter's and the Vatican. They walked along the banks of the Tiber, threw stones in the water. They danced, swam, played tennis together, and generally enjoyed themselves. It wasn't until the evening of the 5th day, as the time for Diana's departure was drawing nearer, that their relationship took a turn which was destined to have very far-reaching effects.
Oh, it's been fun, Richard. It really has been.
It's not over yet. You have 2 more days.
1. I leave on the 10:30 flight the morning after tomorrow.
You don't have to go back, you know.
Meaning what exactly?
Do you honestly want to go?
It's not a case of wanting or not wanting. My husband's expecting me.
You'd rather stay, wouldn't you?
That's hardly a fair question.
You don't care 2 raps for your husband. You've intimated as much a dozen times.
Oh, that's not true. I'm very fond of Ralph.
But you don't love him.
Not in the true sense of the word, no. He isn't the type of man to inspire that kind of love.
Am I?
I don't think I want to continue this conversation.
Why not?
Because well,
you're not sure you can trust yourself, is that it?
Quite frankly, no.
I love you, Diana.
No, Richard, please. Don't say any more. Oh, my darling. But this is madness, utter madness. There's nothing in the world I wouldn't give to stay here with you. But I can't, Oh, Richard, what are we to do? What are we to do?
Such was the prelude to a case that had its beginnings for the Missing Persons Bureau on a morning in the July of 1955, when I was visited here in my office by Richard Darnley, a lean, good-looking man who recounted the story of his affair with Diana Forrest in Rome, and then went on to state that he hadn't seen or heard from her since they'd parted some 6 weeks before.
We agreed that she should come back to London to discuss divorce with her husband, then rejoin me in Rome.
She was actually contemplating a divorce?
More than that. She seemed quite certain she'd have no difficulty getting it.
Had she been married for long?
8 years.
There were no children?
No.
And the arrangement was that she should return to Rome?
The following week.
When she failed to appear, she sent no message, no form of explanation?
No.
So you came to London instead, is that it?
After waiting over a month for word.
Do you live in Rome, Mr. Darnley? Your name is English, but...
Yes, you are puzzled by my accent. Yes, I am English, but I've lived abroad so many years, on and off, I have acquired an accent that confuses everyone. I'm a newspaper correspondent. Rome is more or less my base. Fortunately, I was able to secure an assignment over here for a few weeks, so things have worked out quite well in that respect.
Mrs. Forrest gave you no address at all where she might be contacted?
No.
So really you know nothing at all about her except her name. And, of course, the fact that she's married.
To a man named Ralph.
Ralph Forrest,
Presumably.
Well, isn't there any doubt?
Well, I'm not absolutely certain that Forrest was her married name.
Oh?
It never occurred to me at the time, but when she didn't show up, I began to wonder if she'd been completely frank with me. Not as far as her feelings were concerned, but, well, things in general. For one thing, I discovered she was registered at the hotel not as Mrs. Forrest, but as Miss.
Oh.
It could quite easily have been a mistake, of course, but the fact remains.
You discovered this after she'd gone?
Yes, quite by chance, actually. I wasn't sure if she spelled her name with 1 R or 2. I happened to check in the register. Then, of course, my very first move on arriving here was to obtain a phone directory. I went through every Forrest listed, then I rang them one by one, and got absolutely nowhere.
In itself, of course, that's very far from conclusive. Plenty of people aren't on the phone.
Mainly people who can't afford it. And whatever she may have been, she certainly wasn't pressed for cash. Her clothes were exclusively Bond Street, with 1 or 2 Paris creations thrown in. Everything she had was top quality. Her cigarette lighter, for instance, diamond-studded solid gold. Her watch, her accessories, nothing but the very best. You can't tell me someone like that wouldn't be on the phone.
Well, perhaps she was travelling under her maiden name.
Would knowledge of that make her any easier to trace?
It could do. She didn't happen to mention what her husband did, I suppose. What his occupation was or anything like that?
Well, she barely spoke of him at all, except to say that she didn't love him. I gathered the impression he was a good deal older than she was.
Oh?
I could be wrong. It was just an impression I gained.
Don't happen to have a photograph of her, I suppose?
Unfortunately, no, but I can supply you with a fairly accurate description. She had auburn hair, an exceptionally good figure, and the most classic features I've ever seen. I'm not biased when I say she was an astonishingly beautiful woman.
Of what age, approximately?
Late 20s, early 30s.
Her height?
About 5, 6 or 7.
Any distinguishing marks or characteristics?
She had a beauty spot on her left cheek. That's about all.
I see. I suppose it's occurred to you that the most obvious reason for not contacting you would be that she's changed her mind. Either about her feelings for you or perhaps for her husband.
At the risk of sounding conceited, I think it's most unlikely. When we said goodbye at the airport, she was so very sure, Mr. Simon, there wasn't the faintest doubt in her mind that she would return. Of that I'm positive.
Even so, when she actually got back to the reality of London and her former life, the effect on her could have been a little more compelling than she'd bargained for.
If I felt it was as simple as that, I wouldn't be here. Believe me, I have no desire to come between a wife and her husband sheerly to satisfy my own ego. This is something that extends far beyond that. It's impossible to put the relationship we enjoyed into words. I can only say there was nothing about it to inspire any form of guilt in either of us. It simply happened before we realized it, by which time it was too late to turn back.
Then you don't think it might be as well to leave well alone for the time being?
I have to see her again, Mr. Simon. That's all there is to it.
You mentioned something about her being under doctor's orders.
Apparently she was recuperating from some form of illness to do with her nerves, I believe she said. When I first saw her, she didn't look at all well, but by the end of the week she was a picture of health. When she stepped on that plane, you'd have sworn she'd never had a day's sickness in her life. She looked really wonderful. The color in her cheeks, the sparkle in her eyes, everything about her was alive and vital.
Attenzione, attenzione. Volo numero 903 è pronto di partire. Tutti I passeggeri per Madrid, Parigi...
Goodbye, my darling.
Sono pregati
It won't be long. I'll be back before you know I've gone.
Every day you're away would be an age.
For me, too.
Why do you have to stay a week? Couldn't you tell him right off and come straight back?
But these things take time, darling. It's essential that I choose the right moment to break the news, for Ralph's sake.
I suppose you're right. You won't let him talk you out of it?
My darling, he couldn't. No one in the world could do that.
Henry Simon returns to continue this story in just a moment.
In many respects, the case of Diana Forrest was a straightforward one. Insofar as it entailed the failure of a married woman to keep the promise she'd made to a man she'd met whilst away from her husband and in a foreign land, it was typical of its kind. Such affairs are commonplace and bear very little comment. But there was about Richard Darnley an air of complete sincerity. He was obviously in love with Diana Forrest, and I could appreciate the intensity of his desire to see her again. Accordingly, following his departure, I sent for Agent Paul Studdy and acquainted him with the details of the case. It's just as simple as that, Studdy. The old story of boy meets girl.
Yeah, but complicated by the fact that girl has husband.
Exactly.
What I can't figure out is this business of an assumed name. There doesn't seem to be much doubt that it was assumed, but in which case it'd suggest one of two things. Either the lady was out to have a good time, or she had a special reason for keeping her real name under her hat.
If she'd been out to have a good time, as you call it, would she have worn a wedding ring? Would she have made a point of drawing attention to her married status?
I guess not. Even so, it's an angle that bears consideration.
According to Darnley, she was anything but the flirtatious type.
He's stuck on her. It's only natural he'd say that.
Didn't actually say it, but he inferred it very strongly. I should say he's a man with a fair experience of women. However, for the present, that's neither here nor there, of course. What we've got to do is to trace her, not analyze her motives.
Yeah, true enough.
She returned to London on the 11th of June last. Her plane left Rome Airport at 10:30 a.m.
What company?
Trans-International. Flight number ought to be very easily checked. And from there, of course, we should be able to obtain a list of the passengers.
You figured that she'd have traveled under a real name on the way back, huh?
She'd have had no choice. In the first place, she'd have had to produce her passport in order to secure a ticket. At the offices of Trans-International Airways in Regent Street, Studdy sought out the flight manager, a plumpish, bespectacled man named Armstrong, who was quick to supply him with the information which he required.
Flight 903, Rome, Paris, London, Madrid, June 11th, departure 10:30 a.m.
That's the one.
Name again?
Well, the name she stayed under in Rome was Forrest, Diana Forrest, but it's not likely you'd have her listed under that name because we're practically certain she used an
here we
assumed...
are, Forrest, Miss Diana Ann.
But she has a husband back in England. She couldn't be a miss for a start.
Down here in black and white, see for yourself.
There's no chance of a mistake.
None whatever.
I don't get it. Could she possibly have traveled under an assumed name?
Oh, no, passport formalities would prevent that.
Then Diana Forrest must be your correct name.
Miss Diana Forrest, yes.
Well, there's a turn for the books if you like it.
Everyone?
Is there any address listed?
No, afraid not. What we have down here is London.
Look, there's no point in telling me I'm crazy, Mr. Darnley. You can check with the company yourself. Her name's included in the passenger list as Miss Diana Ann Forrest, which in turn was taken from her passport, and passports don't lie. Well, not unless they're faked, and I doubt if that would apply in this case.
But hang it all, she was wearing a wedding ring. I saw it on her finger as clearly as I can see you now.
Well, a wedding ring doesn't prove marriage.
My dear Study, she returned to London to approach her husband about a divorce.
That's what she told you, sure, but quite obviously she was lying. She doesn't have a husband to divorce.
This is beyond me. I've never heard of anything so ridiculous.
Well, I don't mind admitting it's got us groping, too. The big question is, do you want us to carry on with the search or not?
At this point, certainly, if only to satisfy my curiosity.
Swell. You know, I was hoping you'd say that.
Oh?
I'm kind of curious myself.
Well, it all boils down to two possibilities, Study. Either she was travelling with a false passport, which seems a trifle far-fetched, or for some reason she deliberately misled Darnley into believing that she was married.
Which seems equally as far-fetched.
Which favours the alternative, then?
Well, I don't know what I favor. The whole thing's so screwy. We're wasting our time trying to figure it out logically. Anyway, I managed to tee up a date with one of the hostesses who was in attendance on the flight. I got to meet her at Armstrong's office around 3.
It's almost that now.
Yeah, better get moving. Not that it's going to get me any place, but you can't shoot a guy for trying.
The hostess in question, one Judith Farewell, proved to be an attractive young woman, eager to help in any way she could. Carefully, Study described our quarry to her, and was rather surprised by her response, which was both ready and definite.
I should say I do remember her. How could I do otherwise? Oh, what I wouldn't give to look like that.
Did you happen to notice she was wearing a wedding ring?
That's right. It made me wonder, rather. She was down on the flight card as single. I wasn't sure who the men were she was with.
Men?
One put her on a plane in Rome. A most attractive-looking man he was. Then there was another one to collect her at the other end. I know because I saw him with her outside the customs shed.
What was he like?
A lot older than the other. He had his arm round her. They seemed very devoted. I tell you what, though, Jeff Fisher could probably help you.
Jeff Fisher?
One of the boys at the airport. I noticed him talking to them. I'm pretty sure he shook hands with the man. As a matter of fact, I meant to ask him about them later, but it slipped my mind. Oh, dear. I suppose you think I'm a dreadful sticky-beak, but the fact is she quite fascinated me.
Yeah, seems to be a knack of hers.
Oh, I can believe that. Without a doubt, she was one of the most gorgeous creatures I've ever seen.
At London Airport, Study had little trouble in locating Jeff Fisher, who was attached to the Trans-International staff as an aeronautical engineer. Shortish, with fair hair, he was clad in navy overalls and smoked a pipe.
Round 30, 5, 6, or 7, good figure, and really something to look at.
And I was talking to her?
Well, according to Miss Farewell, you shook hands with her escort. He was quite a bit older than her, and...
Oh, hold on a tick. You're not thinking of Ralph Sanderson.
Ralph Sanderson?
The big wheel of Sanderson Chemicals. My father's one of his executives.
Ralph Sanderson, eh? Well, could be. Was he with the doll I described?
He just collected her off the plane, and they're about to go through customs. Yes, she's certainly a lovely woman, right enough.
Well, who is she? Any idea?
Diana, his wife.
By this time, Study was immune to shock. He made no attempt at all to unravel the tangled thoughts which were plaguing his mind. But upon ascertaining the home address of Ralph Sanderson from a phone directory in the terminal lobby, he took a cab to number 8 Northmore Street, St. John's Wood. It was a huge home, cream in colour, and surrounded by carefully tended lawns.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Is Mrs. Sanderson in by any chance?
Why, yes, sir. Who shall I tell her is calling?
Study's the name. Missing Persons Bureau.
Ushered into a spacious, lavishly furnished drawing room, the agent was asked to wait. He'd barely had time to examine his surroundings, however, when the sound of a closing door softly behind him attracted his attention, and he turned to find himself confronted by a woman who fitted Darnley's description of Diana Forrest in every detail, even to the beauty spot on her left cheek.
You wanted to speak with me, Mr. Studdy?
Yes, I'm not disturbing you, I hope.
Not at all. My husband's at the office. I have the afternoon to myself. You're looking at me very strangely. Is something wrong?
Well, forgive me, ma'am, but I was just wondering how I should approach this thing.
Is it so touchy?
Kind of.
You worry me.
Well, about 2 months ago, you spent a week in Rome, is that right?
Yes.
You were registered at the Plaza Hotel under the name Diana Forrest. On the plane coming back, your seat was also booked under that name.
Forrest is my maiden name. I use it purely for convenience.
Well, pardon me, ma'am, but that's not strictly correct. An unmarried woman can't have a maiden name.
Aren't you a little out of line, Mr. Studdy?
Out of line, perhaps, but pretty much on the mark. You're not Sanderson's wife. You never have been, in spite of that wedding ring on your finger. You're just plain Miss Diana Forrest. You've got a passport to prove it.
Apart from the gradual draining of colour from her cheeks, Diana Forrest betrayed no sign of emotion. Her gaze held Studdy's unflinchingly, and in silence she listened as he explained who had sent him and how it was that he'd found her. At length, having said his piece, he fell silent again, extending his lighter as she reached for a cigarette in the box on the table.
Thank you. All you've said is perfectly true, of course. Obviously, it's quite pointless denying any part of it, so I won't bother trying. 10 years ago, I went to work for Ralph Sanderson as his secretary. We became very close, and soon after the war, he asked me to marry him. He'd already had a wife, but they were living apart, and she'd promised him a divorce. When the time came, however, she went back on her word. She refused him his freedom, and to this day she's still his legal wife. Ralph is the kindest, most thoughtful person in the world, Mr. Studdy. He made every effort to keep his marriage intact, but when he discovered there was no saving it, he did the only thing he could. He left her. When she changed her mind about the divorce, it almost broke his heart. His health cracked up. He had a serious breakdown. For 9 months he was in hospital, on the verge of death. But he finally pulled through. And when he came out, I was waiting for him.
And the real Mrs. Sanderson, what about her?
So long as she receives her allowance, she's quite content to remain in the background. They have no children, so there are no worries there. Actually, things were working out surprisingly well, till I got sick and my doctor packed me off to Rome. The rest of the story you know.
Well, not quite. You told Darnley you were coming back here to ask your husband for a divorce.
I intended to tell him the truth on my return to Rome. There seemed no point in going into it all then. In my own eyes, I was a married woman, so what I told him was essentially true. I didn't want to say any more till I'd spoken to Ralph.
But you didn't go back.
When it came to the point, I couldn't. I was so sure of myself, until I stepped off the plane and saw Ralph there waiting. Even then I was determined to go through with it. I kept putting it off, waiting for the right moment to tell him. But that moment never came. And somehow, while Ralph lives, I don't think it ever will.
You mean he's still in bad health?
His heart could give out at any time. He might go on for 20 years, or he might drop dead tomorrow. But while it continues to beat, I'll remain with him as his wife. You see, Mr. Studdy, much as I love Richard, my respect for Ralph is too great. For as long as he needs me, I can't leave him. I know that now, as I never knew it before.
But you talk of him almost as if he was a child instead of a captain of industry, a financial tycoon.
Without me, he'd be as helpless as a child.
I don't get it.
He never recovered from his breakdown, Mr. Study.
Well, so he's got a weak heart. Does that make you his nursemaid?
But it's more than his heart. I thought you knew.
You what?
His illness left him without sight. He's totally blind.
Henry Simon returns to conclude this story in just a moment.
Ralph Sanderson lived for 2 more years. On his death, following a heart attack in 1957, Diana Forrest returned to Rome. She found Darnley still waiting for her, and a few weeks later they were married. I think they'll be happy together, don't you? And now, this is Henry Simon, as always, inviting you to meet me here again, and for the present, bidding you au revoir.